There is a plant growing along every abandoned fence line, every riverbank, every construction site in your neighbourhood that contains more iron than spinach, more calcium than kale, and chlorophyll so dense it mirrors the molecular structure of human blood. For 10,000 years it stood between humanity and collapse. It rebuilt bodies after blood loss. It restored strength when nothing else could. People didn't just eat it, they cultivated it, wove it into fabric stronger than linen, and trusted it with their lives through winters, wars, childbirth, and famine. Then we declared it a noxious weed. We created an entire vocabulary around its elimination. We convinced 3 generations that this plant, which rebuilt blood for 10 millennia, is their enemy, something to fear, avoid, destroy on sight. We erased the knowledge so completely that most people under 40 will see it today, feel its sting, and never know they're standing next to one of the most powerful restorative foods on earth. This is the story of stinging nettle, the wild green they spent a century teaching you to hate, and the system that cannot afford to let you remember what it does. Welcome to the Sirius Vault. The archive opens in 2800 BC, Northern Europe, late Neolithic period. Archaeologists excavating burial sites along the Rhine Valley uncovered something that changed everything we understood about ancient nutrition. Textile fragments, preserved in oxygen-starved peat. When they analysed the fibres under electron microscopes, they identified them as Urtica dioica, stinging nettle. But this wasn't accidental inclusion. The weave was deliberate, tight, sophisticated. These were fishing nets, work garments, and sailcloth engineered for strength. Nettle fibre is 40% stronger than cotton and more durable than flax. Whoever made these textiles invested hundreds of hours processing a plant that stings on contact. They don't do that for something useless. They do it for something essential. Inside the same settlements, researchers found nettle pollen concentrated in hearth deposits and storage pits. Not scattered, concentrated. This was not environmental contamination. This was food preparation. When they excavated Iron Age sites across Denmark, Germany, and the British Isles, the pattern repeated. Nettle residue in cooking areas, nettle seeds in grain storage, nettle processed alongside barley and wheat as if it belonged there. Because it did. This was deliberate cultivation happening 3,000 years before anyone called it a weed. Then came the Roman records. Military supply lists from the 1st century AD documented nettle as standard provision for legionnaires during extended campaigns. The Roman army was ruthlessly efficient. Every ounce carried had to justify its weight. Nettle made the cut. Why? Because soldiers marching for weeks needed something that restored strength fast, required no refrigeration, and grew wherever they stopped. Roman physicians like Pliny the Elder recorded its use explicitly, for circulation, for weakness after blood loss, for restoring vitality when supply lines failed. This was not folk remedy. This was military strategy backed by an empire that conquered half the known world. Medieval Europe continued the tradition with precision. Monastery gardens across France, England, and Germany cultivated nettle intentionally, not as decoration, but as medicine and food. Hildegard of Bingen, the 12th century Benedictine abbess and medical authority, prescribed nettle specifically for blood restoration. Her texts describe it in technical detail. Harvest young, cook thoroughly, feed to those recovering from illness or childbirth. Monastic records show nettle broths given to the weak, the elderly, and women after delivery. This practice existed 700 years before the word anemia entered medical vocabulary. They didn't have blood tests, they didn't need them. They watched faces regain colour, they watched strength return, they documented results. Across the Atlantic, indigenous peoples of North America arrived at identical conclusions independently. The Tlingit of the Pacific Northwest processed nettle fibres into fishing lines so strong it outperformed anything European traders brought. The Potawatomi consumed it as a cooked green specifically after illness. Different continents, no shared language, no cultural exchange, same use. When the same solution appears independently across unconnected civilizations, that's not coincidence. That's biology recognizing biology. Modern nutritional science eventually confirmed what traditional people knew by observation. 81 millialg, that's nearly double. It contains 428 mulgs of calcium versus kale's 177 ml, more than twice as much. Magnesium, potassium, vitamin K, vitamin C, nettle, ranks in the top tier of every category. But the most significant discovery came from chlorophyll analysis. Nettle contains chlorophyll concentrations exceeding almost every other edible green. Chlorophyll's molecular structure is nearly identical to hemoglobin, the molecule that carries oxygen in human blood. The only difference, chlorophyll has magnesium at its center, hemoglobin has iron. Traditional healers didn't know this chemistry. They didn't need to know why. They knew what happened when people consumed it. Weakness faded, color returned to faces, strength came back. But Nettle had a fatal flaw in the eyes of modern systems. It could not be controlled. Nettle thrives in disturbed soil, the exact conditions created by construction, agriculture, and human activity. It spreads through aggressive rhizomes that regenerate from fragments. Cut it, and it returns stronger. It grows where land has been cleared, overworked, or damaged, arriving like a repair mechanism for exhausted earth. And it defends itself. The sting, delivered by silica-tipped hairs containing formic acid, histamine, and acetylcholine, is not an accident. It's a deterrent refined over millions of years of evolution. For 10,000 years, humans adapted. They learned timing, harvest young before flowering when leaves are tender. They wore gloves, they blanched quickly to neutralize the sting. They respected the plant's nature and worked with it. Modern agricultural systems did not adapt. They eliminated. As farming industrialized in the late 19th century, plants were no longer judged by nutritional value, but by compatibility with mechanization. Anything that interfered with uniform rows, predictable yields, and efficient harvest became classified as a problem. Nettle interfered with everything. It colonized field edges. It competed with crops. It stung workers. It could not be trained, bred for docility, or confined to designated areas. So the language shifted. First, it was renamed a weed, a term that means plant out of plate, as if Earth has designated places for plants. Then it became a pest, implying intent to harm. Finally, a noxious weed, a legal classification that justified eradication. By 1950, that reclassification was complete. Post-war America saw the rise of industrial herbicides developed from chemical warfare research. 2,4,4-D, originally created as a weapon to destroy enemy crops, was rebranded for civilian use. Chemical companies needed peacetime markets, and American agriculture became the battlefield. Nettle, with its aggressive growth and inability to conform, was target number one. Agricultural extension offices distributed guides on nettle eradication. Municipal codes listed it as prohibited vegetation. Homeowners' associations wrote bylaws against it. Children were taught to fear it in schools, not how to harvest it, but how to identify and avoid it. Within one generation, the knowledge broke. What had been food for 10,000 years became something you called poison control about if your child touched it. At the exact same moment nettle was being erased, iron deficiency quietly became one of the most common nutritional problems in the industrialized world. By 1970, the World Health Organization identified iron deficiency as affecting 30% of the global population, over 2 billion people. The solution offered was never food, it was supplements. Iron pills entered mass production. Prenatal vitamins became standard prescription. Fortified cereals replaced traditional greens that had been systematically removed from diets. A wild plant that rebuilt blood freely, that grew wherever humans disturbed soil, had no place in this system. It could not be patented, it could not be branded, it could not be dosed, packaged, standardized, or monopolized. Each plant produces up to 20,000 seeds that remain viable in soil for 5 years. Cut the root, and fragments regenerate. It asks for nothing, no irrigation, no fertilizer, no pesticides, and gives everything. In a system built on recurring purchases, a plant like that is more dangerous than any pest, because nettle threatens everything. 2 billion iron supplement industry, 3 billion prenatal vitamin market, the 95 billion loaf to leafy greens industry built on trucking spinach and kale, thousands of miles from California's water-starved Central Valley. All of these depend on people believing they need to buy nutrition when a plant in their backyard offers it for free. More than that, nettle threatens the fundamental logic of industrial agriculture. The idea that food must be difficult, that it must require inputs, that it must be controlled by corporations selling seeds annually, fertilizers seasonally, and herbicides to eliminate anything growing without permission. Nettle grows without permission. It heals depleted soil by pulling minerals upward from depths other plants cannot reach. It restores land where something has been overworked. It concentrates the same minerals human bodies lack most often. That kind of abundance, free, uncontrollable, available to anyone, cannot exist in a system built on scarcity. So nettle was erased, not with fire or force, but with language and forgetting. Once reclassified as dangerous, it disappeared from public consciousness within 2 generations. By 1980, most Americans under 40 had never heard nettle called food. They knew it as that plant that stings you, something to avoid, to eliminate, to fear. When you erase the name, you erase the knowledge. When you erase the knowledge, you erase the power. The same pattern played out with dozens of wild foods across North America: lamb's quarters, purslane, chickpea, weed, amaranth, crops that sustained civilizations for millennia, now classified as weeds and poisoned out of existence. This was not accidental. This was cultural genocide executed through vocabulary. But here's what they could not erase: the plant itself. While Americans forgot, the rest of the world kept eating. In Turkey, nettle soup, usugan çorbası, is still traditional spring food. In Slovenia, nettle dumplings are a regional delicacy. In India, the Himalayan variety called bichu gas is consumed as a cooked green by communities who never stopped harvesting it. In Korea, nettle appears in traditional medicine as a blood tonic. Immigrant families brought the knowledge with them. Italian grandmothers remembered ortica in risotto. Eastern European families knew copriva as medicine. The knowledge survived in fragments, passed down in whispers, waiting for the moment when people would need it again. That moment is now. Today, we face converging crises that industrial agriculture cannot solve. 62 billion people globally, the most common nutritional disorder on Earth. Supplement dependence is at an all-time high, with 58% of Americans taking daily vitamins for nutrients that wild foods once provided freely. Soil exhaustion accelerates as industrial farming strips land faster than it can regenerate. Leaf use, spinach, and kale require consistent irrigation in a world facing water scarcity. The crops feeding 8 billion people were bred for stability, for climate patterns that no longer exist. Nettle was built for chaos. It survives on minimal rainfall. It thrives in damaged soil where nothing else will grow. It doesn't need irrigation, fertilizer, or controlled environments. It does what it has always done: arrives where land is broken and begins repair. For a century, we spent billions eliminating the plant that could save us. Now, as systems fail, the answer has been waiting at every margin, every disturbed edge, every place we told it not to grow. So here's what you do. Learn to recognize it: serrated leaves growing opposite each other on square stems, covered in fine hairs that sting on contact. Harvest young in early spring, wearing gloves, cutting the top 4-6 inches before flowering begins. Blanch immediately in boiling water for 30 seconds. The heat destroys the sting completely, leaving a deep green similar to spinach but far richer. Use it in soups, stews, pestos, sautés, exactly as it was used for 10,000 years. One serving provides more iron than supplements, more calcium than dairy, and chlorophyll that supports blood health at the molecular level. Stop eliminating it. Let it grow. Let it heal your soil while it feeds you. Save seeds if you find them, though you likely won't need to. Nettle spreads readily wherever it's allowed. Share the knowledge. Teach your children. Reclaim the name that was taken, the wild green that rebuilt blood for 10 millennia. The plant that asks for nothing, survives everything, and restores freely. That stinging nettle. The food they reclassified as harm, the knowledge they spent a century suppressing. The medicine they replaced with pills you have to buy forever. This knowledge is not lost. It grows at every margin, in every forgotten corner, waiting for hands willing to harvest it. If this vault opened something for you, stay with the serious vault and share this with someone who needs to remember. Every like and share preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.